Ladies and gentlemen, this is breaking news. Thank you so very much for tuning in. Really amazing news, especially if you care about a foreign policy that alters what we've been used to for the past 24 years. This is a sea change in U.S. foreign policy, ladies and gentlemen. If you care about stopping and preventing never-ending military conflict, and you are very, very happy at this moment. Vice President Vance, according to CNN, casts tie-breaking Senate vote to narrowly confirm Pete Hegseth as Defense Secretary. Of course, Mitch McConnell, Collins, and Murkowski voted against Hegseth because they apparently are the old-school Republicans that love never-ending military conflict, quagmires around the world, and foreign policy debacles. Thank God we have a completely new paradigm in U.S. foreign policy. Thank God. This is huge, ladies and gentlemen. Hit subscribe to the channel right now. Let's get to Pete Hegseth. The confirmation is done. He is the new Secretary of Defense. They'll vote against Kash Patel, the usual suspects. But J.D. Vance with a tie-breaking vote as vice president. Let's get started. To my super chat, Paul Bartlett. Your super chat, ladies and gentlemen, is so greatly appreciated. If you enjoy my work, if you enjoy this channel, if you enjoy these live streams every day, and I'll try to step it up the next week to 2 or 3 live streams a day, your super chat is so greatly appreciated. Let's get started. Thank you, Paul, so much.
Let's talk about just new news on these Trump nominations, cabinet nominations. Joining us, Montana Senator Tim Shee. Senator Shee, welcome, sir. Cloture vote, Pete Hegseth passed it 51-49. Procedural vote cuts off debate. There'll be, I guess, a full confirmation vote tomorrow. Mitch McConnell stayed with him. He lost Susie Collins and Lisa Murkowski. You think Hegseth will make it on the floor vote, sir?
Yes, I do. He'll make it through.
What's the issue right now? I mean, he's been up and down, and they've tried to smear him, and he's a strong guy. He's not the guy he was 10 or 12 years ago. I know him very well. He's a brilliant guy. I mean, what's the issues left here?
Well, I mean, you've seen this movie before, Larry. We all have. If you're a prominent conservative for any office in the land, the Democrats have a coordinated smear campaign with their friends in the press. I mean, of course, they've been holding on to these new special memos that I was able to read yesterday, behind closed doors in the Armed Services room. And of course, they've been holding those for a last-minute ambush that's been planned all along. They did it to Clarence Thomas. They did it to Brett Kavanaugh. They're doing it to Pete. They do it to all of us. So they don't have policy issues to run on. They know they've lost on policy, so they resort to this.
This is a new era in American politics. Nobody cares about the typical apoplectic, hysterical Democratic Party condemnation, judgment. Nobody cares. You're not going to be able to do what they tried to do to Brett Kavanaugh, or what they tried to do to Clarence Thomas, or what they try to do to Trump every single day. For the past 8 years, nobody cares. Okay? The Democratic Party has become basically a social club where if you don't fit in within their paradigm of sensibilities, you're then excommunicated. You committed heresy and blasphemy, and oh my God, it's the end of the world. The average American doesn't care. 70% of Americans don't trust media. I think it's around even worse with Washington, D.C. and government. But let's continue.
He's going to make it through. It's going to be tough, but we're going to get it done.
You're so right. We were just talking with our political panel about this, how the left and the social media left are all calling Elon Musk a Nazi, because he exuberantly was waving his arms.
Elon Musk literally stated, "You're all in my heart." Again, this is the type of outlandish, absurd, stupid leaps of logic that morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats make. If you didn't know that he was saying, "You're all in my hearts," and you didn't know it was just him jumping around on stage, and then he has a certain unique type of personality, then maybe you could come to that warped conclusion. But see, again, the sensibilities of liberal Democrats are what make the Democratic Party, not policies and certainly not results. That's why they lost the popular vote.
Just like normal people do. I mean, there were pictures of Hillary Clinton doing it. You know, throughout these nominations, throughout the hearings.
Wisteria, hello to my super chat and to the members. Thank you so very much. Hello.
Of the committee, Senator Xi. I mean, I watched a lot of it. I watched Pete. I watched Bessence. I watched others. The Democrats, you know, your sex smears or alcohol smears or you're a Hitler, you're a no issues, no policy issues. They've learned nothing from November 5th. They are in such a weak, bad position, it seems to me. I've had friends of mine say, you know, I watched the nomination hearings and the Democrats had nothing to say. You know, nothing.
That's exactly right. And that's why they lost on November 5th, Larry. I mean, that is why. They have no message. And their message is if you disagree with them, you're a racist. You're a transphobe. Right. You're a homophobe. You're a xenophobe. Whatever it is, pick your phobia. That's what they call you when you have constructive policy disagreements. And the American people said, you know what? I'm sick of name calling. I want cheaper groceries. I want cheaper gas. I want a secure border, safe streets. So let's get to work with common sense policies. And that's exactly what the Trump administration is doing with our support.
Couple other quickly. John Ratcliffe passed bipartisan vote. My friend Ratcliffe going to be CIA. I think that's terrific. How's Scott Bessent going to do, Senator Xi?
I think he'll be fine as well. You know, of course, we're seeing every last-minute procedural objection that can possibly be conjured up to slow this down. I think he's going to make it. I think, for the most part, everyone's going to make it through. There's going to be some fights. We know they're gearing up to fight Hassan Tulsi, whom I know personally. I think we're going to be able to get her across the line. But it's going to be a fight. But the next 3 weeks are going to be very interesting. But we're going to get this cabinet in place because we have a lot of work to do.
They can afford to lose Mitch McConnell, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins. They can afford to lose 3 senators every single confirmation, and it won't matter. Vice President J.D. Vance cast the 51-50 tie-breaking vote after former GOP leader Mitch McConnell and GOP Senators Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine joined Democrats to oppose Hegseth's nomination. McConnell and Murkowski and Collins will likely oppose Kash Patel. Love Kash Patel. They'll likely oppose Tulsi Gabbard. Love Tulsi Gabbard. And I don't think they opposed, I'm not sure if any one of them opposed John Ratcliffe. Maybe they're afraid of Central Intelligence. Who knows? But anyway, we can afford to lose 3 senators every single confirmation. It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, ladies and gentlemen. Let's look at a really interesting, let's see if we can hear as much as possible of Tennessee Senator ripping a disingenuous hit piece on Pete Hegseth.
Last week, during his 4.5-hour confirmation hearing, America saw exactly why President Trump nominated Pete Hegseth to be our next Secretary of Defense. Pete is patriotic, smart, he's an energetic leader. His priority is our warfighters and having their backs by focusing the Department of Defense on lethality and competence rather than extraneous political and social issues. He's the type of leader that can inspire, recruit, and retain the absolute best talent America has to offer. Despite Pete's qualifications, the mainstream media, desperate to derail President Trump and his nominees, has gone after Pete's character by airing false and unsubstantiated claims.
Nicholas, thank you so very much. Nicholas Orm, thank you so very much. Paul, thank you. Nicholas and Paul, and to my super chat, thank you. Big day, huge day. U.S. foreign policy has to focus on what's best for the United States of America. Okay? And that doesn't mean abandoning allies. It means putting an emphasis on ending perpetual military conflict. Okay, you want to strive for peace. You want to strive for stability on the world stage. And you want to put the United States, our national interest, our economic interests, first and foremost before any other policy objective. That means not sending Americans to never-ending military conflict. The old school Republicans did that with Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld. Democrats joined in with them. President Obama was supposed to be a huge paradigm shift between Bush and he was not. He was not. He presided over a very failed intervention in Libya that helped further the destruction of that country. And so, but see, morally superior liberal Democrats, by and large, don't care about foreign policy. That's why they were just fine with Biden and Harris. They don't really care. It's about political power. Okay, that's why Biden pardoned his entire family, and Democrats are still pontificating about all the crimes Trump committed. It's like, well, Trump actually didn't commit any crimes. On the other hand, Democrats got away with a litany of crimes, from servers to laptops to bribery and graft, potentially, likely. And they had the entire Washington establishment. They had media, when media counted as, an authority or a trusted source of information in this country. They had every single possible advantage, social media algorithms. Now there's a new sheriff in town. It's a new ball game. There's a huge paradigm shift, a sea change in American politics. And we're not going to get an emphasis on warped, twisted, fringe ideologies. It'll be what's best for the country and an anti-endless war foreign policy. Okay, Hegseth is not a pacifist. Trump is not a pacifist. I understood this when I was on the left too. I thought Bernie Sanders would be, a huge paradigm shift. He's basically a tool. He's just simply a tool of the Democratic Party. He would have done the same things as President Obama and very likely Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld. It's sad to say, but it is true. Trump is that paradigm shift, is that sea change. And if you want to call it populist, whatever you want to call it, the emphasis is an anti-war foreign policy. That makes Trump the moral imperative, by far, over Harris and Biden.
Take, for example, the article published Tuesday, just this week, by the New York Times. Despite the salacious and misleading headline in this paper, buried beneath 13 paragraphs of slanderous allegations, the Times actually disclaims the entire story with a direct quote from the supposed victim herself, denying the allegations against Pete, saying, quote, "There was no physical abuse in my marriage." Yet look at this headline. Hegseth, ex-in-law, claims he was abusive to second wife, even though in the same article, the second wife disclaims all of this.
Then they say, well, the headline is not talking about physical in nature, but more emotional. And it's like, they don't do that to Democrats. Everyone knows that media is an extension of the Democratic Party. There was a time, maybe, who knows when, but there was a time when Democrats and Republicans, or I should say, when Americans looked at an article and said, okay, you know what? There's probably a lot of truth to this. Now it's just like public relations, gossip. That's all hearsay. That's all it is, masquerading as journalism.
This isn't journalism. Take a moment to think about this. This is a hit job. The New York Times intentionally ran with a salacious and debunked account, buried the truth, and distorted the lead simply to undermine President Trump and his nominee. The New York Times is not alone. Unfortunately, NBC News, The Hill, Politico, and even the Associated Press all chose to run this same salacious, false headline instead of the facts. Unfortunately, I'm not surprised. This is the type of misleading and often unequivocally false reporting that we've learned to expect from the left-leaning media. The American people remember that the New York Times is the same publication that denied and suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story leading up to the 2020 election. It's the same paper that endorsed Joe Biden in 2020, the same paper that endorsed Kamala Harris in 2024. You know, the American people are sick and tired of the deception stemming from this alliance between the Democrat Party and the so-called mainstream media. This is yet another example of a story published with an aim to do harm, and despite evidence to the contrary. It's why media has lost much of its credibility with the American people, who see this article for what it is: a desperate, last-minute attempt to generate controversy where none exists. Pete Hegseth is someone who's going to fix the Pentagon and deliver on President Trump's vision of peace through strength. He's exactly the type of leader that the Pentagon needs in the face of a increasingly complex and escalating security situation that's occurring around the world. So while I'm disappointed, I'm not surprised at this 11th hour attempt by the media to raise debunked and completely discredited falsehoods simply with an aim to derail a confirmation. I urge my colleagues to see through this noise, evaluate Pete's nomination based on the merits, which is why I plan to vote for Mr. Hegseth.
And this senator is an honorable man, and that's fantastic. You're always going to get 3 never-Trump senators that are still in office, and once McConnell is up, his seat is open, you'll get finally a Trump Republican. But this is what Hegseth had to deal with when he was getting confirmed. All of the most hilarious senators who had the most absurd scandals. The person you're watching, the senator, pretended to be let's just say, something that she's not, a person she's not, which is typical for the wonderful, morally superior, highly educated. But let's continue.
What extraordinary event happened in that 32-day period that made you change the core values you had expressed for the preceding 12 years?
Senator, again, I very much appreciate you bringing up my comments from 2013, because for me, this issue has always been about standards. And unfortunately, because of some of the people that have been in political power for the last 4 years, priorities other than standards, lethality, and meritocracy have driven decision-making.
I'm quoting you from the podcast. Women shouldn't be in combat at all. Where is the reference to standards, that they should be there if they can carry, if they can run? I don't see that at all, Mr. Hegseth. What I see.
So this is an attempt by the Democrat to uphold a specific type of ideology. And Democrats love to say that the Kremlin's afraid of them and our adversaries are afraid of Democrats. They're not afraid of Democrats at all. You saw major invasions and calamities take place while Biden was in office. Okay, not only was there zero foreign policy vision on anything, I mean, it was a complete catastrophe, so much so that Democrats jettisoned Biden and allowed Harris to usurp him after he won his primary. But this is a focus on an ideology. Okay, it's not a focus on results. Democrats are not results driven. They're ideological driven. They're driven by ideology. Ideologically driven.
Is that there's a 32-day period in which you suddenly have another description about your views of women in the military. And I just want to know, what changed in the 32 days that the song you sang is not the song you come in here today to sing?
Senator, the concerns I have and the concerns of many have had, especially in ground combat units, is that in pursuit of certain percentages or quotas, standards have been changed. And that makes the combat more difficult for everybody involved.
Let me make a suggestion about what happened in that 32 days.
Notice how she's petrified of actually addressing the issue that he brought up. See, Democrats generally, I don't say like generally, the modern day Democrats, maybe the old school Democrats 30, 20 years ago, most of them or a lot of them were different. Today's Democratic Party does not believe, I can tell you, I know they don't believe their own ideology. They push it because they think it's morally superior. They didn't run on a Green New Deal. They didn't run on packing the courts. They ran on 2 wedge issues, hot button issues. That's it. And they lost like all the rights that they think that Trump will take away from them. They lost when Biden was in office. So it's like Biden and Democrats failed to protect the rights that they claim Democrats will protect. And she didn't address his primary concern. And the concern, I've never been a soldier. Like, God bless the women and men in the U.S. military. I've never been a soldier, so God bless you. Man or woman, if you're in the military, God bless you. Okay, more courageous and brave than most Americans, myself included. God bless you. But he's talking about a specific issue, okay, that Democrats, like, they don't even want to address it in sports, much less, something like the military.
You got a nomination from President Trump. Now, I've heard of deathbed conversions, but this is the first time I've heard of a nomination conversion. And I hope you understand that many women serving in the military right now might think that if you can convert so...
Could you imagine if anyone claimed to know what women in the military think? I mean, it's a bit presumptuous of the senator here.
Rapidly, your long-held and aggressively pursued views in just 32 days, that 32 days after you get confirmed, maybe you'll just reverse those views and go back to the old guy who said straight up, women do not belong in combat. Now, Mr. Hegseth, you have written that after they retire, generals should be banned from working for the defense industry for 10 years. You and I agree on the corrosive effects of the revolving door between the Pentagon and defense contractors. It's something I would have liked to talk to you about if you'd come and been willing to visit with me. But the question I have for you on this is, will you put your money where your mouth is and agree that when you leave this job, you will not work for the defense industry for 10 years?
Will you, Senator, pay double the amount of federal and state taxes to ensure that we have Medicare for all and single-payer health care? Well, why does it matter if it's enacted or not? Will you put your money where your mouth is? Because that's the same exact thing you're asking of Hegseth. The current Democratic defense secretary was a lobbyist, or worked for a defense contractor or defense company, I believe. Okay, so it's like this is something that he believes should be implemented, just like Democrats believe, a lot of environmental and, for example, single-payer healthcare should be implemented. Well, why don't you? I love when you have pundits talking about single-payer healthcare and raising taxes and corporate tax. They all have corporations. If you have a YouTube channel, you have a corporation, almost certainly. And I mean, most of the time, not all the time, but why don't Democrats, why don't liberal pundits, far left socialists and communists pay double in taxes? There was a New York University, an NYU study that said that single payer would lead to double or perhaps even triple tax collection. So pay double in taxes. If you want that policy, put your money where your mouth is. Oh, they won't do that.
Senator, it's not even a question I've thought about, because
it's not about it right now.
It's not one. My motivation for this job.
I understand that. I just need a yes or no here.
Come next.
Time is short. I just need a yes or no.
I would consult with the president about what the policy should be at the Defense Department.
In other words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry.
He's saying that he would be willing to abide by that rule change or guideline if it was enacted. similar to the taxes you would be willing to pay, Senator, if single-payer health care was enacted. Neither are happening. Let's put it this way. Generals not working for defense contractors will happen light years before single-payer, which will never, unfortunately, happen. It's a good idea, but as with all Democratic Party policies, or most or a lot of policies, it's simply, idealism without reality backing it up. There's not even single payer within a state. So it's a good idea if it could take place. I don't know if you could implement that with 350 or 60 million Americans, with Democrats allowing millions upon millions of people into the country. So, but anyway, let's continue.
For 10 years, but you're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be the one, let us just be clear, in charge of the generals. So you're saying sauce for the goose, but certainly not sauce for the gander?
I would want to see what the policy of the president is.
I'll bet you would.
These are the requirements today for people serving in the industry, men and women. They are gender neutral, and they are very difficult.
Notice the passion on issues that Democrats are routinely wrong on, or misguided, or believing information that misinforms. Look, the passion. How many Thanksgiving dinners have been ruined? How many get-togethers have been ruined? How many New Year's Eves? How many, 4th of July picnics? How many dinners have been ruined by morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats, passionate about Harris, passionate about Biden, so passionate about Biden that they're just as passionate about Harris usurping Biden after he won a primary. The passion and energy, it's there. The emphasis on reality and fact-based decision-making, not so much.
To me, they have not been reduced in any way.
Not reduced in any way. God bless you if you're a soldier in this country. Is that accurate?
And our combat units, our infantry is lethal. So please explain specifically, because you will be.
What unfortunately is also can be described in such a word is oftentimes going on the subway in New York, unfortunately.
In charge of 3 million personnel. It is a big job. And when you make these public statements, and I get you were not Secretary of Defense then, I get you were on TV, I get you were helping veterans, I get it was a different job. But most recently, you said this in November of 2024, knowing full well you might have been named as Secretary of Defense. So please explain these types of statements, because they're brutal and they're mean.
They're not brutal, they're not mean. They're simply statements by a veteran of this country who has the right to give his viewpoint, my God. And he didn't state them in a mean or brutal manner. Everything is mean and brutal and bigoted and prejudicial to Democrats. Everything they don't like, it's like, oh my God. Elon Musk, look what happened. It's like, oh. He said, as usual, I think Musk did it on purpose. I swear, just to focus media's ire and outrage away from anything that's actually going on that he's doing good for this country. But it's always mean, brutal, cruel. Anything they don't like, mean, brutal. But their hit pieces daily against Trump, their lies by omission, overt, patently false claims, that's okay. The vitriol and venom. I used to be the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post. I used to be the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post, okay? This was a long time ago, 2015, 2016. You could read my writing in The Hill, the Huffington Post, Salon, the Federalist, other publications at hagoodman.com. But I remember the vitriol and venom of Clinton supporters against Bernie Sanders supporters. I remember. Oh my God, were they so mean and rude and brutal, and then they lost. And I told everybody that Clinton would lose. And then it was 8 years of a McCarthy-era nonsense.
And they disrespect men and women who are willing to die for this country.
Well, Senator, I appreciate your comments. And I would point out I've never disparaged women serving in the military. I respect every single female service member that has put on the uniform, past and present. My critiques, Senator, recently and in the past, and from personal experience, have been instances where I've seen standards lowered, and you mentioned 11 Alpha, 11 Bravo, MOS, places in units, and the book that has been referenced multiple times here, The War on Warriors. I spent months talking to active duty service members, men and women, low ranks, high ranks, combat arms and not combat arms. And what each and every one of them told me, and which personal instances have shown me, is that in ways direct, indirect, overt, and subtle, standards have been changed.
Now listen to the morally superior liberal Democrat when confronted with facts and reason and logic. Listen to the emotional response.
Inside infantry training units, Ranger School, infantry battalions, to ensure that
Give me one example. Please give me an example. I get you're making.
Give me one example does not mean that's not a rebuttal to what he said. She doesn't know whether that's true or not, but she doesn't care. The Democratic senator doesn't know it. A rebuttal, if indeed what Hegseth was saying was wrong, would be that's not true, that it's not been changed at all. Not give me an example. I think she actually did say, or no, was it Warren that said nothing's been changed. But there have been, according to Pete Hegseth and others, standards changed, physical standards that have been changed that could potentially impact the lives of people on the battlefield. That's not my, I'm not a soldier, I'm not a veteran. That's not my viewpoint. That's the viewpoint of soldiers and veterans in this country. Many. If that's true, then what Pete Hegseth is saying is very important. But the senator's rebuttal is, give me an example. The senator should know the examples or should know categorically if what Hegseth is saying is false. True or false. Not that difficult. You're a senator.
These
Commanders
generalized
meet
statements.
quotas to have a certain number of female infantry officers or infantry enlisted, and that disparages those women who
Commanders
are
do
incredibly
not have to
capable
be
of meeting
quotas
that
for the
standard.
infantry. Commanders do not have to have a quota for women in the infantry.
Now, this could be a lie by omission. There might not be the way corporations, the way the government, the way any bureaucracy works is that you might not have a specific quota listed, but there might be institutional pressure or bureaucratic pressure or political pressure or pressure from media or influence from certain ideologies to promote or, have a certain number of a specific individual. That's that I'm talking about, that Hegseth is referring to. You might not have it written within a bureaucratic handbook. You need X amount of, leaders within a certain organization. But there could be pressure to say, okay, we need less men at this position, for example.
That does not exist. It does not exist. And your statements are creating the impression that these exist, because they do not. There are not quotas. We want the most lethal force. But I'm telling
Actually, Democrats do not want the most lethal force. They want a force. They're not generally not results oriented. They want, you could look at even, the argument from liberals in the West Coast. You want to be saved from a calamity by people that look like you. Okay, I don't think that's the case for any human being. I think any human being wants to be saved from a dangerous situation by anyone who's noble and brave enough to actually risk their life to save them. Doesn't matter skin color, doesn't matter, anything. background, what ethnic background, it doesn't matter. You just want somebody to help you. But the entire, ideology is you want somebody that looks like you to help you from, this terrible calamity. It's like, well, not necessarily. I don't know if that's. I think your life being saved is the most important thing.
You, having been here for 15 years, listening to testimony about men and women in combat and the type of operations that were successful in Afghanistan and in Iraq. So please, do not deny that you've made those statements. You have. We take the responsibility of standards very seriously, and we will work.
That's also up for debate. Not by me. Like I said, I'm not a soldier, not a veteran, but there are soldiers and veterans who disagree with the senator.
Work with you. I'm equally distressed. You would not meet with me before this hearing. We could have covered all of this.
There's not a chance in the universe that a senator from New York would back Pete Hegseth. That's why he didn't meet with the senator.
Before you came here, so I could get to the 15 other questions that I want to get to. So women you have denigrated. You have also denigrated members of the LGBTQ community. Did you know that when
I have not been involved in international security arrangements.
Yours legally.
There's three main ones. Do you know?
I have not been involved in international security arrangements because I have not been in government other than serving in the military. So my job has been to
no. The answer is, can you name one of the three main ones that the Secretary of Defense
talking about defense arrangements. I mean, NATO might be one that you're referring to.
Status of Forces Agreement would be one of them.
Status of Forces Agreement. I've been a part of teaching about Status of Forces Agreement.
But you don't remember to mention it? You're not qualified, Mr. Hegseth. You're not qualified.
Now, God bless the senator here. She is an American hero. Absolutely. Okay. I don't think the line of questioning, though, is very fair to Hegseth, but this lady is an American hero. Absolutely. He was confirmed. It's like you could have asked the same types of questions of numerous defense secretary candidates. I don't know if they would have answered in the correct manner. But anyway, let's continue in this line of questioning.
Qualified. You talk about repairing our defense industrial complex. You're not qualified to that. You could do acquisition and cross-servicing agreements, which essentially are security agreements. You can't even mention that. You've done none of those. You talked about the Indo-Pacific a little bit, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact.
No,
you could probably. Let's continue.
You could, because you've not
but I
even
know we have
bothered to
allies
do.
in South Korea and Japan and in AUKUS with Australia and trying to work on submarines with them.
Mr.
and data
Hegseth,
transfers
none
with
of those
them.
countries
We
are
have
in
allies
ASEAN.
across.
None of those three countries that you've mentioned are in ASEAN. I suggest you do a little homework before you prepare for these types of negotiations. Listen, Mr. Hegseth, we ask our troops to go into harm's way all the time. We ask them to go into harm's way. And this behind me is a copy of the Soldier's Creed, a copy that usually hangs over my desk here in the Senate, and you should be familiar to as a successful businessman.
Testify.
You, sir, are a no-go at this station.
Do you think this is appropriate behavior for a leader?
Senator, the overwhelming majority of anyone who's worked for me, including the on-the-record.
So this senator utilized gossip and hearsay as fact and then said, do you think it's appropriate behavior? The media does this often. They'll say, it's been said that the Republican candidate tried to sell the planet to Martians. Is that appropriate behavior? Like, well, but you're asking if gossip and hearsay is appropriate behavior as if the gossip and hearsay were fact.
statements that have been submitted to this with their name on it on the record, men and women who worked with me every day, are the overwhelming preponderance of evidence that testify to my leadership and professionalism in leading Vets for Freedom and Concerned Veterans for America. My leadership has been completely impugned on these veterans organizations that did fantastic work.
Mr. Hegseth, I'm not even going to go into the, I'm not even going to go into the
and we manage our
accusations.
financial books with integrity across the board. How many people, everybody who runs a campaign.
I have limited time. I'm not going to get into the accusations that come from Fox News. Now you have some of your Fox News colleagues here. There were multiple instances of accusations against you about drinking on the job.
All anonymous, all false, all refuted by my colleagues who I worked with for 10 years at 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. and everything.
The challenge here for me, Mr. Hegseth,
they've only seen me be professional
is when there is
every
discussion
single time.
about personal challenges and you admittedly had issues with heavy drinking. It's hard to kind of square this.
Now, if he had a DUI, for example, that would be bad. Very bad for his confirmation. An anonymous accusation from Fox News or CNN, or what? I mean, that shouldn't even be brought up.
Square the circle here. It's kind of a difficult thing to do. Let me ask you, if I have about 90 seconds left here, which is it? Have you overcome personal issues, or are you the target of a smear campaign? It can't be both.
Of course it can be both.
It's clear to me that you're not being honest with us or the American people because you know the truth would disqualify you from getting the job. And just as concerning as each of these specific disqualifying accusations are, what concerns me just as much is the idea of having a Secretary of Defense who is not transparent.
I'm not going to put words in the mouth of Secretary Esper or anybody else.
He said them himself. You don't have to. What are you scared of? Did he do the right thing by apologizing?
I'm not scared of anything, Senator.
Then say yes or no. You can say no.
The laws and the Constitution.
Okay.
In any
so
particular
Donald
scenario.
Trump asked for the active duty 82nd Airborne to be deployed during that same time. Secretary Esper has written.
Secretary Esper has written, this person has alleged, this person has accused. This is why they lost the popular vote and Democrats are still in 2016 software. They would never allow, they had a laptop that was full of likely bribery and graft. Hunter and everyone around Biden is pardoned. And then that's actually legitimate and real. But it's all about the allegations against Trump and Hegseth from a book. See, nobody cares anymore about allegations or accusations from partisan, originating from potentially partisan individuals. Nobody cares. If you have a fact to base your claim, then do so. But this is going to be a completely new ballgame. Okay, Democrats that break the law will actually be held accountable by Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and John Radcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard and others. And if news organizations lie, they will be held accountable. There's already precedent. And Trump's likely going to win a $1 billion+ or $10 billion settlement with CBS for cleaning up the Harris interview. Lou, thank you. Nicholas, thank you. Everybody here, thank you. Arunta 5, thank you. Wisteria, thank you for being members. Let's continue.
That he convinced him against that decision. If Donald Trump asked you to use the 82nd Airborne in law enforcement roles in Washington, D.C., would you also convince him otherwise?
The unspoken lie, the lie by omission here is that when Democrats or demonstrators that leaned left or voted Democrat in every 4 years or every 2 years for Congress, when demonstrators linked to left-leaning organizations or left-leaning demonstrators committed billions upon billions in property damage and went after Trump in the White House late May of Trump's last year in office, that's what I believe the senator is referring to. And yes, the president at that point, when there's rampant chaos and mayhem, has every right to bring in soldiers. Okay? President Eisenhower did that to further civil rights. This isn't like the National Guard throughout history has been brought in when there's mayhem and chaos and unrest. The citizens of the country want that. It's not like Trump's this authoritarian. Like, nobody believes this nonsense.
I'm not going to get ahead of conversations I would have with the president. However, there are laws and processes inside our Constitution that would be followed.
President Trump said in November that he is willing to consider using the active duty military against the, quote, enemy within. Have you been personally involved in discussions of using the U.S. military active duty inside the United States?
Senator, I'm fine. I'm glad.
If the roles were reversed and you had conservatives like committing billions in property damage, every liberal would be demanding F-35s be sent against the Trumpers.
Glad we finally got to the topic of border security equaling national security, because it's been abdicated and ignored for the last 4 years.
That wasn't my question. I'm just asking, have you been involved? You're about to be the Secretary of Defense potentially. Have you been involved in discussions about using the active duty military inside the United States?
Senator, I am.
President Eisenhower did. Lots of presidents have. But with Trump, he's an authoritarian.
Not yet the Secretary of Defense.
Right. I'm
if
just
confirmed, I would be party to any number of
conversations. But you haven't been in any of these conversations.
Which I would not reveal what I have discussed with the President of the United States.
No, just have you been in conversations? You're going to be in charge of 3 million people. The active duty that I know you care about, I believe you care about. So have you been in conversations about using the active duty in any way? Whether it's setting up in detention camps, policing dangerous cities, have you been involved in any of those conversations?
Certainly, I have been involved in conversations relating to doing things this administration has not, which is secure the southern border and not allow floods of illegals to enter our country through an invasion that threatens the American people. And there are ways in which the military is already playing a role in that, to include 5,000 National Guardsmen from Indiana and Texas. We're at the border right now allowing for border security. So there is plenty of precedent
for military members staff detention centers.
And then when we start talking about qualifications for.
So this was excellent here by the Oklahoma senator. Excellent.
Or if you're qualified for it, could the chairman tell me what the qualifications are for the Secretary of Defense? Mr. Chairman, could you tell me what the qualifications are for the Secretary of Defense?
I'd be happy
I'll read
for
it.
you to do that. Yeah.
Let me read it for you, because I Googled
I was getting some advice from my second in command.
Yeah, but I'm just making a point, because there's a lot about qualifications, and I think it's so hypocritical of senators, especially on the other side of the aisle, be talking about his qualifications, not going to lead the secretary or be the Secretary of Defense, and yet your qualifications aren't any better. You guys aren't any more qualified to be the senator than I'm qualified to be the senator, except we're lucky enough to be here. But let me read you what the qualifications of the Secretary of Defense is, because I Googled it, and went through a lot of different sites, and really it's hard to see. But in general, the U.S. Secretary of Defense position is filled by a civilian. That's it. If you have served in the U.S. Army Forces and have been in the service for, you have to be retired for at least 7 years, and Congress can weigh that. And then there's questions that the senator from Massachusetts brought up about serving on a board inside the military industry, and yet your own secretary that you all voted for, Secretary Austin, we had to vote on a waiver because he stepped off the board of Raytheon. But I guess that's okay, because that's a Democrat Secretary of Defense.
So Senator Mullen is excellent here. Really, really good. Really good. I mean, he did a fantastic job pointing out the hypocrisy, which, it's a very easy thing to do, and a lot of Republicans never do it. That's why the Republican Party was so weak up until recently. And I think President Trump single-handedly transformed the Republican Party. They now, like Senator Mullen, there's more senators and there's more Congress people that push back and point out the rampant hypocrisy. It's unbelievable what Democrats have gotten away with the past 10 years.
But you so quickly forget about that. And then Senator Kaine, or I guess I better use the senator from Virginia, starts bringing up the fact that what if you showed up drunk to your job? How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night? Have any of you guys asked them to step down and resign from their job? And don't tell me you haven't seen it, because I know you have. And then how many senators do you know have got a divorce before cheating on their wives? Did you ask them to?
Look at Tim Kaine. Oh no, that's sorry. I think it looks. I thought that does look like Tim Kaine, I believe.
Step down? No, but it's for show. You guys make sure you make a big show and point out the hypocrisy because the man's made a mistake. And you want to sit there and say that he's not qualified? Give me a joke. I mean, it is so ridiculous that you guys hold yourself as this higher standard and you forget you got a big plank in your eye. We've all made mistakes. I've made mistakes. And Jennifer, thank you for loving him through that mistake. Because the only reason why I'm here and not in prison is because my wife loved me too. I have changed, but I'm not perfect. But I found somebody that thought I was perfect. And for whatever reason, you love Pete, and I don't know why. But just like our Lord and Savior forgave me, my wife's had to forgive me more than once too, and I'm sure you've had to forgive him too. And so thank you. So before I go down this rabbit hole again, tell me something about your wife that you love.
She's the smartest, most capable, loving, humble, honest person I've ever met. In addition to being incredibly beautiful. And don't forget about your kids. I'm supposed to talk about my kids?
No, well, she's also the mother.
Oh, an amazing mother.
Yes.
Of our blended family of 7 kids.
Brother, I'm pulling you along. I'm trying to help you here. Do you believe that you're going to be running the Secretary or the Department of Defense by yourself?
Senator, absolutely not. Just as President Trump is assembling his cabinet, I look forward and already am in the process of building one of the best possible teams you can imagine, with decades and decades of experience outside of the Pentagon, driving innovation and excellence, and also inside the building, knowing how to make it happen. Yes, sir.
So, in your organizations that you did have the privilege of running, did you have a board that you?
In both organizations, we had a board. Yes.
Okay, and what did you do with that board? What kind of decisions did you make with them?
Those boards provided oversight and insight into decision making.
They all have special, unique sets that maybe filled gaps that you're not.
Can you imagine if the Republicans had 54 or 53 Senator Mullins from Oklahoma? Could you imagine? I mean, the Republicans would never get intimidated or pushed around by media. I mean, now they, thank God, hopefully they won't. But could you imagine if you had 54 of these types of senators? As opposed to the McConnell, Collins, Murkowski, like, what is the point of them being Republican? I don't even know. Like, I'm not a Republican or Democrat. I don't care about political parties. I want what's best for the country. That's it. Okay? I'm conservative on most things now. Okay? But I just want what's best for the country. I'm not into political parties. But could you imagine if you had 50 plus of this type Republican, my God, it'd be amazing.
Expertise in?
Yes, sir.
So do you believe you're capable of surrounding yourself with capable individuals that you're going to be able to run those same ideas by and surround yourself with people that are smarter and better equipped in maybe areas that you don't necessarily carry those expertise with?
Senator, the only reason I've had success in life, to include my wonderful wife, is because of people more capable around me and having the self-confidence to empower them and say, hey, run with the ball, run with the football, take it down the field. We'll do this together. I don't care who gets the credit. And in this case, that's how the Pentagon will be run.
Let's end with this, Mr. Chairman, about the qualifications. You got a man who has literally put his butt on the line. He served 20 years in the service, multiple deployments, has heard the bullets crack over the top of his head, has been willing to go into combat, been willing to see friends die for this country. And he's willing to still put himself through this. His wife is willing to still stand beside him, knowing he wasn't perfect, knowing that all this was going to be brought up, and he's still willing to serve the country. What other qualifications does he need?
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the
So, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have 3 Never Trumpers and J.D. Vance breaking the tie for a lot of these huge, monumental, momentous, profound moments in modern American history for the next, until there's a challenge. And by the way, we can go back in time a couple of years. Instead of focusing on Arizona, for example, when Mitch McConnell, when McConnell was leading the Senate in the most foolish manner possible, he diverted funds away from what I understand. I could be wrong. He diverted funds away from Senate runs in Arizona and Nevada and other places to Maine and Alaska. Okay? So, there you go. And I think it was like, he even backed Murkowski and Collins in their primaries. He wouldn't even let a pro-Trump person win their respective primaries. It was like unbelievable. And so, you're going to have, you'll have 3 senators. That's fine. That's totally fine. I don't mind if McConnell and Murkowski and Collins, every single nomination, vote against Trump's pick as long as J.D. Vance breaks the tie, which is just fine with me. Okay. Glitch McConnell. That's good. Glitch McConnell. Anyway, hit subscribe, everybody. God bless America. God bless you. Thank you to the members on this channel and to the super chat. Everybody here, thank you. I'll see you tomorrow, everybody. This is huge. Pete Hegseth is defense secretary. John Radcliffe is already Central Intelligence Chief. Pam Bondi will be confirmed, no problem. It'll be interesting to see if the 3 Never Trumpers try to oppose Pam Bondi, but it won't matter, like I said. Kash Patel will be confirmed. My God, it's a dream team. Thank God. Anyway, see you tomorrow, everybody. Huge